This morning we begin a new sermon series that's going to bring us through to the beginning of Advent, which I checked and it's only 1 month away. One that's going to highlight for us the importance of what we've received and then what we do with those things. A series that's difficult times to preach about because of the subject matter, but essentially in sharing because of the subject, but essential in sharing because of that very subject matter and the importance of how we use it. And it's a sermon series, as you can read behind me, that's simply titled Generosity. So in the coming weeks, you hear some amens out of the members of the business committee as we talk about financial giving, or from program leaders as we discuss the use of our talents, or from Lee as we talk about the use of our time for things like kettles. You'll understand all of their excitement in hearing these messages. But this morning we're going to begin with a sermon looking at our model for generosity and where it comes from, that generosity is God. Now this might sound like a strange sermon title considering last week, if you were with us, and if not, go back and watch it, Colleen preached a sermon highlighting for us John's words, that God is love, and to love is to be like God. And this message is not going to refute any of that, but it's hopefully going to build upon it. That the love that God has for us, for his people, for his creation, has been worked out in the generosity that he's shown to us over his time. Generosity evident in the sending of Jesus, in the sacrifice that he made. In the sending of the prophets before that to guide the people and call them back to him. The sending and anointing of kings to oversee and lead them. The appointing of judges and priests in the early days of their people in order to help them keep on the right path and to receive the blessings he was going to provide. The calling of Moses through a burning bush, Noah to build an ark in the desert, Abraham and Sarah in their advanced age to become the parents of a mighty nation. Generosity that traces its roots all the way back to the beginning, when God chose to make people, to be in relationship with him, to provide that for them all that they would need and to make sure they would have all that they could desire. Reminders throughout time and history that God is generosity, and to be like God is to be generous. So let's unpack what that looks like in our passage this morning. As we do, it's important to define what it is that we're looking at. Generosity is the quality or condition of being generous. But what does that mean? To give help or to offer support more than what is usual or expected. The world would tell us that generosity is the giving of more than what is usual or expected, which sounds like a lot, but if we're going to say this morning that God is generosity and generosity is God, then there must be more to it. And so a biblical definition of what this word would mean, and here's one that I found this week. Biblical generosity is a selfless, sacrificial, and cheerful giving of time, resources, talents, and love, motivated by God's own generous nature and his ultimate gift of Jesus Christ. It extends beyond money to include compassion and kindness, is a spiritual discipline rooted in trust and gratitude, and is ultimately for God's glory, the benefit of others, promising eternal rewards. It's selfless sacrifice modeled by God, rooted for us in gratitude and trust for what he's given, done for his glory, for the benefit of other people, and will lead us to eternal reward. And it's been modeled by God, as I've shared throughout history, in our coming together as well, but in the narrative of our story this morning. Now, if we were to read the words that come before our text, we would see that God has been to work creating. He's made the heavens and the earth. He's placed the sun, the moon, and the stars, provided water and separated it for land. He's created the vegetation and the animals to fill the water, the sky, and the land below. And then he created humans in his image to be part of this new creation. Genesis chapter 1 says, God looks down and sees all that he has created and says, it is good. And he takes a day of rest to demonstrate the rhythm that will be needed to function in this new world he's created. But then as we turn to chapter 2, we have a narrative, the narrative that we've read this morning. Not completing or a competing story, but a shifting of the focus from a universe creating, life-speaking God to a more personal reflection on the relationship between God and his greatest creation people. And in verse 18, we read that God, for the first time in our Bible, says, "It is not good." And out of this desire to make God good for humanity, we see the carrying out of God's generosity for his people in every action that he made, in every facet of their being, every need that they would have. Not because he needed them, but because he wanted them to be there. Life itself, an act of generosity from God. Generosity shown in every way imaginable. Spiritual generosity, that we were created to be in relationship with him. He created them personally. He breathed his own breath of life into them. He placed them exactly where they needed to be, provided for their needs, was an active part of their lives in the Garden of Eden. Then he created or offered physical generosity, They were placed not in a dry desert climate where things would be difficult to grow, not in a cold, desolate place where surviving would be complicated. It says he placed them in a garden that our passage says had every kind of tree growing from the ground, pleasing to the eye and good for food. This garden is strategically located between 4 rivers that would provide the water to sustain them and the vegetation that was growing in it to sustain them for years and generations to come. Then God offers them mental generosity. He doesn't just place them here with nothing going on. He gives them jobs to do, to be overseers responsible for taking care of this creation for him. There were tasks to be done in the naming of the animals and so much more. He created and brought forward them the land that they would need to look after in order for things to keep growing from the ground. A task to find meaning in their lives and to keep focused on as they worked with and lived in this creation that God had brought together. And then he met their emotional needs as well, providing relationship with another human person as the final act of generosity that we read in this story. God looking down and realizing that the land, the trees, the animals, and even himself would not be enough for this person. And so he creates another human so they can be in relationship with each other. A part of the one being the building block for another, a connection to one another from the very beginning. Now, I don't often quote this biblical scholar because his commentaries were written in the early 18th century, but I believe Matthew Henry might have most beautifully described this generosity of God for the emotional needs of the people in this way. And he said the relationship as God intended it was that she was not made out of his head to be above him, not out of his feet to be trampled on by him, but out of his side to be equal with him, from under his arm to be protected and near his heart to be beloved. Not over or under, but equal in their creation, each having a responsibility to the other, to care for and provide, to put the other first in order that both might thrive and survive. This was the demonstration of God's generosity to his creation from the very beginning. And friends, while we're living in a much different time, that generosity is still on display for us if we take the time to look around and to see it. God is still looking after our spiritual needs. He's left us this text to read, to get to know him on a deeper level. We have the opportunity and the privilege to lift our prayers up to him, to come to a church service and to a place like this to be welcomed in by his people. There are commentaries and devotionals, access to content like never before in the history of human civilization, which also comes with challenges as well. God is still offering us spiritual generosity. He's asking us to come to Bible studies, to attend Sunday services, to hear from his people, to help us understand what is found within these pages. He's still demonstrating physical generosity for us. We have more than enough. Some of us perhaps too much, others too little. But even in our harshest climates, people are finding a way. God is showing through. In this beautiful country we're blessed with, there is more land, water, and wildlife than we would know what to do with, that we're called to protect. God's still providing us with the mental tasks and stimulation to move forward, technology that makes it easier at times and harder in some ways as well, especially in turning it off to find that balance he modeled for us in Genesis chapter 1. A created world, though, that we are still called to be stewards of, to oversee, to lead, to care for, even when we don't do a great job at it. As is often the case more and more today, as we rob the land of its resources, set fires to its surfaces, and allow it to become more volatile all the time. And God, most of all, has provided for our emotional needs as well. He's given us, through his generosity, the opportunity to be in relationship with him, yes, to have that God-shaped hole in our lives that came as a result of the flood, filled through the actions of Jesus on the cross, but also the privilege to be in relationships with one another. Friends and family, partners, our people. That whether we're married, single, widowed, or where we find ourselves, that God has provided us with people to be part of our journey. That he's provided this wonderful church family to journey with us through the highs and the lows. That there are programs here based on interest and age and gender and gifting and experience and so many other things for us to be a part of, to find those connections. People to walk with us in the darkest and most difficult moments, to celebrate with us in the amazing times of life. Our person or our people for each stage of our lives, helping us to see him and experience his love no matter what is happening. Now, for each of us, those relationships will be and are and will look different, but they will be just as impactful on us if we let ourselves be open to them no matter what shape they take. Because just as he did before, God has continued to provide for us all, that we in his creation will need all that we will need in order to survive and thrive in this life until we join him in the next. But the question we must ask ourselves today and every day is, what will we do with what he's provided for us? Because while Adam and Eve ultimately were given all of those things, they ultimately placed their trust. They cast their lot aside for the promise of something more. They chose their wants over their needs, themselves and the future that they thought they could have over the one that God was offering and had provided for them. So what will we choose today and every day that we have left? To use our time, our talents, our treasures, and our ties that bind us to others for ourselves, our gain, our benefit, our wants, our desires, our pleasure? Or to choose to turn them back to him, to trust in the one who's given them to us out of his love and generosity, to repay his generosity with our own by offering it all back, to give our time for his purposes, seeking to use the moments we have left to grow his kingdom, to be his hands and feet in this community, to speak his truth to the lives of this world, to be his light into the darkness of sin and death that's all around us, to give our talents for his glory, not seeking to grow our own personal following, focused on likes and shares as the world is and it would tell us is important, but offering what we've been blessed with back to him to draw people closer to him, using our gifts developed in the secular world to benefit the kingdom work being done here in finance or youth ministry or music ministry, administration or AV or wherever it might be used for him, to generously offer our treasures, using our financial resources for his purposes, giving to the core to operate the programs that I can assure you are changing lives, to give to capital projects to help maintain this beautiful but aging building around us, to give to CFS and the programming that's happening every day, offering hope in the most hopeless of situations to our friends, our family, and our neighbors, to give to our brothers and sisters around the world through Partners in Mission, that Salvation Army Corps might continue the work in countries of far less resources than we have. Or perhaps it's by offering the family here in Oshawa, maybe in this church family, who are in need, groceries or a meal or a gift card or other support that they might need in these moments. Are we willing to hand over each tie that binds our relationships to him as well? The ones we have, the ones we've lost, the ones we hope will come. To let go when possible of the ones that are only bringing us hurt or taking us from him. To seek reconciliation in the ones where it's needed, or to offer forgiveness in the ones where we need to be free from the burden we've been left carrying from our choices or those of someone else. To place him at the center of all that we do, are, and the relationships we have or will have, in order that we might experience his love and live it out with everyone we come into contact with. To get involved in programming here in order to deepen relationships with him and his people through fellowship and Bible study and life groups and intergenerational events, community events, because he's placed amazing people in our presence to shape his future for ours and for their lives as well. That out of his generosity and in response to that we would trust in him and his plans. That we would stop to see the opportunities he's placed all around us, to be grateful for his generosity. And that we would choose as individuals, couples, families, a church family, today and every day that we have left, to offer that generosity back to him, to offer it to one another and to his people, to offer that generosity to his creation as well.